On here. There you go.
Here I am.
Here you are. It's good to see you.
Oh, you too. I'm so excited for this
Yeah,
conversation.
no, I know. What a crazy week it's been.
Such a crazy week. Um, yeah, so much to share with you all.
So much to share. Well, we're gonna go ahead and get started, everybody. Just before we do, just to do a bit of safeguarding to protect Maya and I and the container that we have set, and also to protect everyone who's listening, whether that's live right now or you're listening to it back on YouTube or Instagram. There are a variety of different themes that may come up in our conversation. There may be themes of abuse of various kinds. There may be different types of grief and traumas that come up. So we're just asking that everyone protects their own energy. Obviously, if for whatever reason you need to leave, do so. If you need to pause the live, whatever you need to do to protect your energy and your well-being, we're just encouraging you to do, just as a content warning moving forward before we begin. And also too, that that we just ask that you just honor the space that Maya and I have created here, and we what we give freely and we give willingly, and we're so excited to join with you all and for you all to be able to join with us in this conversation. So we're just sending lots of love to you all, and we just want everyone to know that this is a safe space. This is a container that has been set. We've set this container way before we jumped on this live today. So yeah, so know that you're being held, and also that this is a sacred space, and anytime that two are gathered together, Maya and I come together, we speak off Instagram as well as on Instagram. So, the space that we set is sacred. And so that we just, we're inviting you into this space. And so we're so excited, like I said, to be with you all. And today we're going to be speaking about healing the masculine and feminine wounds that we have. And it's different things. Those are themes that have been coming up for Maya and I, particularly this week. So we're looking forward to digging into it with each other. And yeah, so Maya, I'll just start off with, just checking in with how you're doing and how this week's been for you.
Oh, thank you. Firstly, thank you for setting that sacred container. And I just want to say as well, if anyone has any questions, please type them into the question box and we will reach them at the end of the conversation if we can, because we're going to concentrate on being present with each other in this space and
Mm,
sharing that energy with you all. Um, the last time we spoke, the last time we had an IG live, so the last time we shared our conversation with the public, I actually became a bit ill. So I got a cold, but it affected my throat as well. So, which is interesting because today I'm about to share more of that vulnerability. So I don't think it's a coincidence that these kind of blockages and came up to be cleared basically. But I do apologize in advance because my throat is still not 100%. So I might need to clear my throat or cough a bit. So I'll try and mute this or just do it as discreetly as possible. But yeah, my week. So we were actually going to do an Instagram live on Wednesday about a different topic. And then because my throat was bad and a variety of different things, we rescheduled for today, but we didn't know exactly what topic it was going to be. But we're very much like, whatever comes up, comes up. And of course, that day, unbeknownst to each other, we were being triggered in certain ways by the idea of collaborating again and collaborating. And I can only speak for myself with this, but collaborating with a man, potentially going deeper into this work with you and making it a regular thing and offering this to the world. I just started having these fears come in regarding the masculine, and then projecting them onto you, and then it was very scary actually, and it was very vulnerable, and I knew I wanted to talk to you about it when we spoke next, but I felt very embarrassed because you and I have never had that kind of relationship before. We have worked together, but it's mainly been a friendship. And so as we deepened in our sort of relationship and our potential sort of partnership going forward with work, I just started, yeah, I started getting these fears of you don't want to do this, like neglect, basically neglect from the masculine. And I can't remember what it was. Oh, yeah, so I started getting triggered by, I won't go into like the absolute details, but the main theme of what I got triggered by was that you weren't hearing me, or you didn't want my voice to be shared, or I wasn't being platformed by you, and I was being ignored by the masculine. And then I was in my story. I was completely in my very strong story of feeling neglected by the masculine. And then I sent you a text checking in with you about this thing that I'd thought had happened. And then I checked again. I checked your Instagram, and I was like, oh no, I've literally made this up. My story is so strong. I can actually see point by point what I have told myself, and it's actually not true. There's no evidence for this. And I deleted the WhatsApp message that I sent to you. I felt so embarrassed. And I sent you another one just saying, if you've seen that, I'm really sorry. I got confused. It's been quite the day, and I'll tell you about it when we talk next. And at this point, I didn't know that you had been experiencing your own triggers around working with me and the feminine. And so I just felt very kind of just really embarrassed about it. And then when we spoke again, you actually were the one that first brought up your triggers that had come up at the same time. And so I'll hand it over to you, because then I'll share more in a bit.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing. And yeah, this week has been really, I say, groundbreaking for us as friends, because I think, it's interesting because on the last Instagram Live, I was saying, I want to go deeper with my relationships with all my friends, and then here you go the next week, like here we are going deeper. And that next level of depth for us was trauma. That was the next layer, was actually hitting some trauma for both of us. And so for me, I was getting triggered because when I start feeling like I'm locked into something, particularly by women, my initial response is to go into an avoidant attachment style. So I start detaching, I start carving out my individuality. I literally, like you said, I create a moat around myself, and that's what I do. It's like, I'm my own person, you can't control me. I have my voice is my own, my thoughts are my own. And I get into this story about people trying to control me. And I see that happen a lot, particularly with the dynamics I have with women. So for instance, certain relationships I've been in exes I've had, as soon as they start trying to lock the relation, kind of get the relationship set and kind of locked in, that's when I usually start going kind of nope, I'm ready, I'm ready to go. And I start becoming, again, avoidant, emotionally unavailable, and just kind of doing my best to kind of exit the relationship or exit the dynamic, whatever it may be. And I felt that coming up between you and I this week, and we had kind of started doing these Instagram lives and kind of starting to put some structure around it, which we're both really excited about. But then I started feeling that come up. It was like, I don't want to be controlled. I'm my own person. I'm an individual, and all that trauma started coming up for me and running these different stories in my head. And so we were both in our trauma, you with the masculine and me with the feminine, at the same time. And so we ended up having a conversation. I think it was on Saturday. Was it Friday or Saturday? I think it was Friday.
Friday, yeah.
Friday, we ended up having a conversation to speak about the Instagram Live we were going to do today. And then I just shared with you about the trauma that I was feeling about collaborating again, and the different kind of hurts and stories that were kind of playing in my mind. And we were both able to just be really vulnerable with each other and open with each other about the different wounding that we had with collaborating again, but what really that signaled and signified for us in terms of the hurts with the masculine and feminine within us.
Yeah, it was really interesting to hear you having that trigger at the same time, and that we didn't know that that was happening. But I was so glad that we were able to talk about it. And even as I was sharing it with you, I felt really embarrassed, but I knew that in the process of sharing with you and in the process of sharing with all of you, that was healing in itself, because I'm not the only one, you're not the only one. You know, I know for me, my feeling of neglect by the masculine runs really deep. And I think that a lot of people, no matter what their gender, where they fall on the gender spectrum, that neglect of the masculine or feminine is a very, very common wound. And it was just so interesting to see how quickly that kicked in with you.
Mm,
You know, how quickly I started to literally think, you don't want to do this, and I've made it up, and I'm rejected, I'm rejected,
mm,
and like looking into everything through that lens. Whereas a day before, it was absolutely fine. It was just when this relationship shifted into that deeper level, and it just all flooded in, and it was
yeah.
fascinating to watch as well, like as an observer. But it was also like, oh, you know, like I was saying to you earlier, I was so excited about us working together, and I still am. But on what planet did I think that this wasn't going to come with its challenges?
Of
On
course.
what planet was this not going to, we weren't going to be called forth to do the deeper work together and to share that with
Mm.
others, because this is all we've ever been training to do, So it was just quite funny at the same time, like, of course this is happening.
Of course. Yeah, of course, of course. And yeah, I think, when we talk about wounding, I really think that this is part of the cultural moment that we find ourselves in right now. That there is so much wounding that we have, and really the masculine and feminine wound is the mother and father wound that we all have, no matter, like Maya said, no matter what gender you are, what how you identify, we all have a mother and a father wound, and that ends up usually articulating to us how we engage with different people and in different relationships throughout our lives. And as we get older, it's for us to really start becoming aware of the different ways that we have been conditioned and trained to respond to different people based off of how, we've been wounded with our mothers and fathers. So it's been really interesting with me, like I said, and some of these things are things that I've known, a lot of them are things that I've known, and I've seen them come up in different relationships that I've had. But it's interesting that, through our friendship, I've been able to see very acutely and very clearly how avoidant I become with the feminine sometimes. And again, that's my own wounding to do. And I'll share with everyone that over the past 6 or 7 years, I've worked very intently with the masculine, and very intently with my father wound. And, because, I've worked in the men's well-being space, and everything like that. So I've been working very intentionally with that wound, and very intentionally with that demographic of people, with men. And I've seen progress being made in myself, and my other close friends can attest to that. I've seen my relationships with other men get so much healthier, so much better, so much more dynamic, so much more vulnerable, so much more safe. I've seen that, and that's because I've intentionally been doing the work with that. And for me, I think because my friends growing up have typically been women, and I respond very well to feminine energy, I think I wasn't so aware of the ways in which women have hurt me, and the ways in which I've been wounded by the feminine, because I was so focused on how men have hurt me, and so focused on in the ways that I've been betrayed by men, abused by men, hurt by men, disappointed by men. And so now at 31, I think because I've done that work with the masculine, spirit is calling me to really take a look at the feminine and look at the ways in which I've been wounded by the feminine, because that is unequivocally impacting my relationships, my friendships. And I think, moving forward, in my romantic relationships as well. And I want to have healthier relationships all around across the board, with all genders, with all types of relationships. So I really feel like I'm being called into that moment right now.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that, and I appreciate that we have this container, because it's just fascinating, because very similar to you, I've known I've had wounding around the masculine, but I haven't felt ready, maybe, or called to actually talk about it. And for me, perhaps it was a little bit different, because it's so excruciating. The wounding I have around the masculine is so deep and so excruciating for me that I talk about a lot of pain. People who follow me on my Instagram and people who've read the book and everything, I'm not adverse to talking about pain, but the wounding I have around the masculine is so painful that I almost have kept that back from people. I almost couldn't talk about it, even with myself, you know. And I had a relationship breakup recently, which was quite sudden, but not massively surprising, because I was choosing people who fed into this wound unconsciously. And it's only been since I've moved into a flat alone, and I've been doing some real soul searching, and also through talking to you, that I've been able to see like how deep this wounding goes, and even just to start even looking at it, because it's that sort of painful. And what's interesting is I met you around the same time that I met my ex, and in a way I thought that he and I would do that work, would do the work with the masculine. But when I reflect back, I actually think at the same time as getting into this relationship, which I unconsciously knew was actually going to play into my stories, I also at the same time created a relationship with you and a deep friendship with you that was very healing. And God knows what would have happened if I didn't actually have you to bring that sort of healthy masculine energy into my life and model something, because it was quite a damaging relationship that I had, and it did leave me very kind of bruised at the end. And so it's just very interesting how I thought things were one way, and actually I think the main relationship with a man that's been healing has been with you. And I'm so grateful for that. And I know we've put a lot of time and energy into like building this together, and creating that sacred container over a course of 4 years, but particularly in the last 2 years, we've spoken more or less every week, at least once a week. And we've shared, and we've been honest, and we've supported each other through a lot. And I think that energy now is, we're ready to like share it a little bit with the world. But yeah, it's just interesting how things have panned out, and that I now feel ready to go a bit deeper and share a bit more about that wounding in this space with you, but also with all of these people who are joining us.
Yeah, for sure. And and before we got on the IG Live, we were speaking. We were both kind of doing work on our own yesterday, preparing for today. And one of the things that was coming up for me was about the sacredness of intimacy, and the fact that you and I have cultivated such an intimate relationship with each other. And when people usually hear intimacy, they think about sex, they think about romance, but intimacy is just that deep connection and vulnerability and safety that you have with someone else. And you and I have really been cultivating that with each other. And I know that, both you and I do that with the people who we're close to. Anyone who's in relationship with me knows that, they experience me very intimately, because that's just how I'm wired. I go deep, and I like to connect deeply with other people. And so I'm really thankful that we have been able to really honor the sacredness of the intimacy that we've created over these years and everything like that. And I think that is really what I think, people, that we're all craving. All of us as humans crave intimacy, and sometimes we reach out, for that in sex. Sometimes we reach out for that in alcohol, drugs, pornography, masturbating compulsively, whatever it may be. But we're searching and yearning for that connection. We're searching and yearning for that intimacy, and we're all wired for it. And there's nothing wrong. That is a beautiful desire to crave deepness and connection, and intimacy is beautiful. But I think as we continue to progress and evolve and heal, it's about learning to fill that intimacy with genuine intimacy, and intimacy that can actually fill that void, and feel that kind of yearning. And so, I hope that through these conversations, we'll be able to continue to model that for ourselves and also for other people, and everything like that.
Yeah, and I echo everything you've just said, and I think what came up for me when you were talking about the different ways that people think intimacy shows up, or the different ways that people chase intimacy. I just feel that it's been so distorted. I think that's where a lot of my pain comes from as someone who identifies as a cis woman. And especially as an Indian woman who was brought up in a very white space as well. So like racism and misogyny kind of collaborated to cause like very, very deep wounding. And I think it was the distortion of what love, the distortion of intimacy, the distortion of connection. You know, I grew up having this particular image of what male and female connection looked like. And, you know, I was even thinking earlier, where did these toxic things come from? And my dad, I lived, me and my family lived above my dad's shop. And he sold like these top shelf magazines for the men who were coming in. And me and my brother snuck down, you know, like you do as kids. And you look at them, and it was just like women with like their, you know, like exposing everything. And the horror of like what I saw, like it's that was the message for me, like, this is what you have to be, but you don't look like this, so you can never be this. So men are only going to want you if you look like this, if you do this, but you're not that. You don't have the big breasts. You're not white. You're not blonde. You don't have like a small nose and like all the things that like these women clearly have and what men clearly want. And like the pain, like I can't even explain, like, I think that's what's been coming up, like even just in the build up to this conversation, it's like the pain of what I felt I had to be for men to love me. And coupled with having a father that was very emotionally neglectful, very, very absent emotionally. And my mum had died when I was 9. So then my brother was also very physically abusive and emotionally abusive. So I never had that like counter energy of, you are loved for exactly who you are. It doesn't matter what you look like. You are beautiful. You are wanted. You are worthy. I never, ever had that. And so for me, this is like one of the strongest woundings I actually have. And it was so interesting because when we had our conversation on Friday about healing some of these wounds that were coming up for us, I actually said to you, my dad's texted me. And me and my dad haven't actually seen each other in about 2 years. And I put some firm boundaries down with my dad because he's wounded me that much. I love him to pieces, don't get me wrong, but that doesn't mean boundaries shouldn't be put down, people. Just note that. But he texted me saying he wants to, see me, meet up with me. And I thought, I know this isn't a coincidence. And I'm not going in there like naively thinking, oh, daddy, like yeah. we're all good now. But it was very much interesting because as I like really deepened into the work even more and opened my heart more, it was interesting who came through, like the main person for me, the person who I craved his love so much, and it was just like, okay, he's doing the work too, because he's reaching out and he's obviously feeling this collective energy. It was just, it's beautiful, but it's painful as fuck.
Definitely. That's the work. It's beautiful, like you said, incredibly painful at times. But there's sweetness on the other side of it. There's deeper connection on the other side of it. There is deeper sense of love and belonging on the other side of it, to ourselves and to others. And so I just thank Spirit for moving through us and continuing to bring us together and, highlighting and unveiling these things with us. And so it's been similar to, with me and, with my mother. I love my mother immensely. I really do. I'm very triggered by my mother's energy at times, as you know. And that for me has really been playing out, particularly over the past couple of years, very strongly. And, it's recognizing that I actually have this wounding with my mother. And like I said, we all do, but for me, it's really been coming up, and Spirit has really been inviting me into a space to really look at it, to really zoom in and look at it more acutely. And I really started thinking about and begun doing the work. And I'm very early stages of doing this work with the feminine. Like I said, I've been working very strongly and intently with the masculine, but with the feminine, I haven't been doing as much. And one of the things that I realized this morning, like as I was taking a shower and preparing for the call, one of the things that you were speaking with me when we had our call on Friday between you and I, you were talking about reassurance. And through that, I was able to see something in myself when you were looking for reassurance from me that I wanted to do this, that I wanted to collaborate and everything, because it took me back to a relationship I had with one of my exes, and she was so intent on having reassurance that I found her attractive, that I wanted to be in a relationship, that that she was desirable. And I remember being in that relationship, and I want to say this, I did not treat this person very well. I did not. Like, I want to be very like open about that. This is someone who I have probably emotionally hurt a lot, and she's someone who I want to get in touch with and apologize, even though she probably has me blocked on every platform there is. But I want to say that because, you know, I do work around, you know, toxic masculinity and the masculine and everything like that. And I want people to know I have been toxic in relationships before, you know, and it's from my own wounding. I didn't do it with any malice, though she would probably argue that. I didn't do it with any malice, but it was my own wounding, you know, and it's something that I've had to really reflect on and really think about. And I remember in our relationship, like her real like need for reassurance from me. And I remember being quite disgusted in the fact that she needed reassurance. Like I went back to this thing of like, why do you need reassurance? And I remember I told her one time, I was like, you're an adult. Like, you know, like I'm an adult, you're an adult. Why do you need so much reassurance from me? Like, you know, what are you looking for from me? And I think that's what continued to put me into that, my avoidant attachment style. Because then I started distancing myself more and almost distancing myself as a way to kind of get back at her for needing me, for wanting me, you know? And it sounds weird and twisted, but it was like, I was trying to punish her for needing that reassurance. So then I was like becoming even more distant and more avoidant. And it was like, the fact that you need this turns me off, and I'm going to be even more avoidant because you need me to be closer to you, which sounds crazy. And then I remember when we were breaking things off, you know, the last message she sent, she was like, you know, did you ever really even love me or like me? And I remember I didn't even respond to that. Like, that's how avoidant I had become. I didn't even respond to the last message. And when I was taking my shower this morning, it just hit me like all of a sudden, and it was, Daniel, you were put off by a woman needing reassurance from you in a relationship because there's an aspect of your trained masculine that considers that to be weak, and you are literally disgusted at that aspect of the feminine. And the reality is you're disgusted at that aspect of the feminine within yourself, and that's what it is. And then you projected it onto someone else. And then that literally just hit me this morning. And I was like, yeah, that's true. It's like, you know, as men, you know, I think we are trained to really put down the feminine. It's part of the patriarchal system of oppression. You know, as men, you know, we everything is about, you know, getting rid of the feminine in us, you know, not being soft, not crying, not being sensitive, not acting like a girl, not being into girl things, you know, whatever it may be. So it's about rejecting those aspects of the feminine. And realize that all of us carry that, no matter how much, you know, how many great relationships we have with women or how close we are to the women in our lives, we all carry that, you know, in some way, shape, or form. And I think for me, that is being highlighted, that actually there's still that in me, you know, and even though I've been doing work over the past 6-7 years, there's that part in me that actually still rejects that part of the feminine. And that's work for me to do. And I remember when you shared that with me, that you were looking for reassurance, you know, and that kind of got triggered again. And I didn't necessarily have those same projections with you, but it just it kind of was an invitation for me to look at that within myself. And it's interesting also as well, because what I really wanted from you was reassurance that I could be my own self. So what I was looking for you was reassurance, actually. And what I was disgusted by was reassurance in the past with women. So again, I'm saying that to highlight the fact that it's really about me and what I think about myself and the feminine within myself that I then have projected onto other women.
Thank you for being so honest and open about that. It really helps give more of an insight as someone who identifies as a woman and is in that, you know, this friendship with you and was in that situation with you. It's like, it gives so much more clarity on what was going on, and that actually you were looking for reassurance that you could be yourself. But also you were disgusted by that aspect of yourself that is feminine, that also needs that reassurance, and then projecting it out onto you know, us as the people who identify as female. And you know, when you were talking about the relationship and that aspect of punishment, you know, that really struck a chord with me, because I have done that with men, not the exact situation, because I was someone who probably needed reassurance maybe more than they did, being the woman and kind of inherently not trusting men from a very young age, after having been bombarded with messages about this is who men are, this is what men do, this is men are liars, men are cheats, blah, 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 like all of this stuff. I grew up with so much resentment, which I didn't even know I carried, because I also wanted men's love so much, because I'd had this, like, you know, firstly, I'm a human. I'm, you know, identify as female, and I was kind of like bombarded with this message of you must have men's love if you're going to be powerful and complete and truly desirable and loved. So I craved men's attention for most of my life, but I also resented them fully, you know, like, and felt they were so low, you know, not consciously at all, but it was there in me. And then I felt like I unconsciously punished them, you know, like when relationships ended, I do this anyway, because I do feel, for me, I haven't wanted to be friends with my exes, which says a lot about the people that I've chosen, which is what I'm working on now. But I feel that there was an element of resentment that came into cutting them off, or like showing them my anger, because I'd poured all of my resentment towards the masculine onto that one person. And that wasn't fair, you know, obviously, because they're one person they suffer as well. They've been conditioned with toxic masculinity and all of these things. They're suffering too. But it was so strong in me, this feeling of resentment or like kind of bitterness, or wanting to punish them somehow, for feeling punished by them, for feeling like I couldn't be loved unless I fit this like into this very small box of like this sexual woman who operates in a certain way and looks a certain way. And I was just so angry about that, and so hurt, and felt rejected from the get-go. I was already rejected before I'd even embarked, you know, like I came from an energy of rejection. That's how it felt to me. So it was like, well, this isn't going to go well. And I think then I definitely chose men unconsciously that it wasn't going to work out with. Men who were going to play into that narrative I already had. Because for me, I guess being right was being safe. When you're traumatized, or when you have that pain, you get so used to feeling unsafe that feels safe. So for me, I found relationships with men that felt safely unsafe, you know, that kind of like reflected something that I felt comfortable with. Because I tell you what, if a very healthy man came along, I don't think I'd have known what to do. I would have been like, what is this? What is going on? I think I would have gone into some sort of like nervous system, like shock. Whereas, you know, an unhealthy man, that I can work with. A man who already fits my narrow ideas of what I've been given about men, that I understand. But it's horrifying. It's horrifying to walk away from a relationship and go, oh, I did it again. And I don't want to do this again, but I really have to dive deep now. Like this is real. And it's going to hurt, but it's so worth it, you know, because I can't keep doing this, whatever the hell I've been doing, you know?
Yeah. You know, well, thanks for sharing, Maya. And, you know, it speaks to those dysfunctional beliefs that we have, you know, so we have, you know, if we have a belief, for instance, that, you know, no one loves us, then when we enter into relationships, everything we do is going to be about setting that person up to prove to us that what we believe is true, that people don't love us. So it ends up becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy, and we play a role in setting that person up to prove us right. You know, and it's like, oh, yep, I knew all along. No, you know, you don't love me, and no one loves me, and no men will ever love me. And like, you know, it plays into those beliefs, and, you know, and recognizing that we all have dysfunctional beliefs in some way, shape, or form. So it's really about being conscious of them and finding and recognizing that when we're starting to go down that path, that we can then, you know, create an intersection and divert, you know, and create and choose a healthier option and choose a healthier path for us. So it's the same way. And I think with me and the feminine, again, it's, you know, like I said, I'm still really early in doing this work with the mother wound. So, but I think what has been shown to me is just the ways in which I punished women for wanting connection with me. And it really is a punishment. And then I have the nerve to loop back and gaslight them and say, oh, we can still be friends and everything like that, knowing damn well they don't want to be friends, but then like trying to make it seem like I'm the more emotionally like secure one, and that they're crazy for not wanting to be friends, and like they've been hyper dramatic this whole time. And like, I look back on the ways and I'm like, yeah, I'm not, they're definitely not my proudest moments for sure. And I don't have many of these moments, but the ones that I can look back on, I'm not proud of, and like the ways that I've gaslit and emotionally abused women, like it's horrible. It really is. And all I can really do from that is grow from it and look to have healthier relationships and look to examine my own wounding that causes me to abuse people in that way, because that's what it is. We can try and dress it up as much as we want, but what I did to certain exes was emotionally abusive. That's what it was. I gaslit them and made them feel like they were crazy, that they were overbearing and just demanding for just wanting what is very normal to want in any type of romantic relationship or a relationship full stop. Just wanting some type of connection, some type of emotional depth, and some type of a reassurance that they're loved, and we all want that. But the fact that, and it's interesting because in my friendships and my platonic relationships, I'm very loving, I'm very giving. But as soon as it enters into a romantic space, historically, I just become this cold, shut down person. And it's almost like I'm unrecognizable in that way. But again, that's my own trauma and that's my own wounding. And, I've been working through, particularly over the past 2 years, working through different abuses that I've endured. And honestly, when you start working through abuse and trauma, you really start understanding how you have gotten to where you are. And so understanding that when I get into a romantic setting, my tendency to shut down is because of abuse. And when I was in certain abuses, I had to shut down in order to cope with it. And so understanding that then helps me to understand how I operate in romantic relationships and what I can do to help shift that and change that energy and change my behavior. First, most importantly is change my behavior and make better decisions. So it's interesting as well. And I think that highlights the fact that in our friendships and our platonic relationships, we can be incredibly healthy. We can be incredibly emotionally aware and astute and exist in these beautiful and rich emotional landscapes. And then when we enter into a romantic relationship, that can all go out the window, so both things can be true, and that duality exists within all of us. And so, the thing is that romance and sexual behavior, you say this, you said this to me before, and trauma loves attaching to our sexual behavior. It loves it. Trauma and sexual behavior go hand in hand. Mm-hmm. And so when we enter into romantic dynamics or sexual dynamics, there can be aspects of ourselves and oftentimes our shadow self that can start coming into play and start taking, coming into the foreground. And so it's important to be very aware of that, again, like I said, we can be one way with our friends and family and a completely different way when it comes to our romantic relationships.
100%. And I echo that, that whole feeling of changing when you're in a romantic relationship, because you jump into this deeper level of intimacy, and the triggers and the abuse and trauma that you may have gone through, everything just comes up, and it's almost uncontrollable unless you are really, really conscious of it. I feel the same, like when I do enter, or historically when I've entered relationships with men romantically, similar to you actually, there's a shutdown, and I was thinking about this the other day. I feel numb. I get numb, and I feel so. As I mentioned, my dad was emotionally neglectful growing up, and he is someone who came over as a refugee from Uganda. He's Indian Gujarati, but he came over from Uganda. Him and his family were given 90 days to leave, and he left a life that he loved at the age of 15, and he came over here. And I say this because this man is very traumatized. This man shut down. He froze. And it's almost like he lost trust in life, and he lost his ability to love, right? Or to recognize love. And so this was the man that brought me up. And because my mum died, I just had this very traumatized, emotionally absent man who didn't protect me in the way that I wished to be protected as a little girl. And his numbness, I realized I had absorbed it and then was acting out that numbness with guys. Because they often fell in love with me at the beginning quite quickly. And I didn't feel the same way, but I was very attracted to them. And I think I was attracted to the whole idea of pain body. My pain body was attracted to their pain body. And, they had the dysfunction that fed my dysfunction. So the sexual attraction comes from that as well, unless it's really, really healthy. But I realized, like, shockingly, that I didn't feel as deeply for them as they felt for me from the offset. And this always happened. And firstly, there's a numbness there because I just couldn't access that part of me that really loved or allowed myself to love men, because loving men is dangerous to me. Loving men felt really, really scary because I loved my dad. I loved my dad, but he completely just I felt like I'd been trashed by that love, and completely ignored being like my theme, and so it was like, well, this unconscious, like, getting into a relationship with someone that I didn't feel the same way about, but I knew I was loved by them, so that was enough for me. But it wasn't enough for the relationship, because it wasn't fair on them, because I never felt that same way. And in a way, I think that's how it was easier for me to resent them or dislike them, because I didn't have that love. And I think they knew it. I think that, it was difficult for them because they knew that. And it's it's the numbness that really made me think about this whole thing. And I remember my dad has often said, I kid you not, he's like, I don't know what love is. I don't know what love is. So if that's your one parent that has remained, and the person that died was this incredibly loving mother who I was just like adoring of, and she adored me. And then I was left in this desolate emotional landscape. I know it sounds very dramatic, but it did feel like that. And then it's like, well, how? And then, like, all these bombardments of, you need to be loved again by a man. You need to look this way. You need to do this. You need to perform sexually in this very particular way, because, like, porn is such a big deal and women are so objectified. It was just like, I think I just gave up. Like, I think part of me just gave up, and like that part of me almost became depressed. Like, there's no point. I don't know how to heal this. It was like a desperation, but also like a despair. Like, I don't know what to do next. And I think I'm seeing that now. I think that's part of the healing, because you have to see that level of despair and absolute agony to actually kind of start healing from that. And I don't know, like you, I'm early days. I don't know what it looks like even, but I know that this is one of the right things to do, to share it with you in this sacred container, but also for other people to hear this, and hopefully for this to resonate with them, no matter where they fall on the gender spectrum.
100%. Yeah, thank you for sharing, Maya. And yeah, we're all working through this the best way we can, and yeah, and that numbness, I just resonate so much with that numbness. And I know a lot of other men do, whether they recognize it or not. And that oftentimes is the sign of abuse. That is, or some form of trauma, that numbness, because we have to become, it's a coping mechanism for ourselves. And it's a good thing actually at the time, because your body does it so it can survive. It's a survival mechanism. So your body oftentimes will shut down. So we do feel numb, but then we recognize when we get into safer environments that we no longer need that. So we have to learn how to start thawing out, and start recognizing that we don't have to be so shut down and cold anymore. And so I honestly, I thank Spirit for inviting us, into this level of communion with each other, because again, like, I want to have healthier relationships in the future, going forward. And so I'm really thankful for you sharing and for us coming together. And as we move forward in these conversations, I know more is just going to be unpacked, and more is going to come to the surface, and more is just going to be revealed to us. So I'm really thankful for that.
Me too. Really, I think in a way it's that old saying, like, you can't heal relationships without being in some sort of relationship, and this is, I think, for us, with the wounding that we have, the platonic friendship like this actually really serves as a very healing container, because it is extremely hard. I think anyone, hats off to you, anyone having a romantic relationship during this time of being on the planet, because it is incredibly hard. And I don't know how much I could heal right now in a romantic relationship. I think this feels like a very safe container to do that, which is why I'm just really excited that we're sharing that as well with other people who are in romantic relationships, and this might spark a conversation with them or within themselves, to kind of like, look at themselves a bit deeper and go, oh, maybe I'm doing that as well.
Yeah, definitely. We're just about probably going to be finishing up soon. So if anyone does have any questions, feel free to put them in the comment section or the question box. But yeah, we're probably going to be finishing up in the next few minutes. But yeah, as we move forward, in these conversations, kind of what is your prayer and intention for yourself and for others who are listening along their healing journey?
I would love to bring forward in a sacred way the pain of the feminine, to be heard, to be witnessed, to be validated, and in that energy to be healed. I'd love to be one of those voices that brings forward my deep pain and shares that and has it witnessed, because I think that's a really, really powerful process. And so that's what I'm asking of myself in a way as well, because I know this isn't the first time. I'm sure we'll go deeper with people in these woundings, but I just want to bring that and for that to be healed in this sacred container with others and with yourself.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, for me, my prayer and intention is that we allow ourselves to go deeper with ourselves. I think that's always going to be a prayer and intention of mine, is that we all just allow ourselves to go deeper. But that we all begin acting out of who we really are. Like there's so much that gets laid on top of us, so many projections, so many labels. And I just want us as people just to be living out of the fullness of who we really are. And that calls to heal trauma and abuse, because trauma and abuse distorts who we are. It's a massive distortion at times. So I want us to live out who we really are. I want, as men, and I can only speak for myself because I can't speak for other men, but as for me as a man, I want to hold the pain of the feminine, and I want to help heal that and hold that and protect women, in a spiritual way, in a practical and physical way as well. But I really want to really have a deeper sense of what that actually means. I talk a lot about it. My living is talking about that, but I really want to embody that. Like, what does it really mean to listen to women? What does it really mean to protect women and, to hold the pain of women? And not just say it and not just make it sound good so people are like, yeah, but really embody it. Like, practically, what does that look like day to day? What does that look like? And I'm thankful for our relationship and our friendship, that I know that I've already begun learning more about what that really means. And I'm hoping to learn more about that. And I'm hoping that other men will follow suit, that as men, we will be able to hold the pain of the feminine and heal the wounding that we have that causes us to create pain in the feminine. The pain and reject the feminine within ourselves, and then, socially reject the feminine that's out in the world. And I would say also then is, my other prayer and intention is just for all of us to divest from systems of oppression, to divest from white supremacy, to divest from patriarchy and other systems of oppression. Like that is, and I think that's what will help us become who we really are, apart from these systems and this trained behavior. So is healing, divesting from systems of oppression, holding the pain of the feminine, which you've shared, and hopefully, and I know, because this is the work that you and I have been called to do, Maya, and hopefully, people will just join us along for this ride as we continue to work with each other, individually, together, and in the wider context as well.
100%. I second all of that. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who has joined us for this. And you'll be able to see the entire conversation as well for those who have just joined. But I'm super excited to go more on this journey with you, because this is how we heal. We heal in community, and we heal in partnerships and relationships. And it's just the most perfect situation and timing for us, I think, particularly in our lives as we go forward. So yeah. Yeah.
Maya, I love you so much. I love you so much.
Too.
I love you so much. And here's to many more healing conversations between us. Thank you all. As Maya said, thank you all for tuning in and listening. And yeah, we will see you next time. We'll see you next time.
Thank you all. Bye.
Wish you all the best. Lots of love. Take care.